Donald Trump and Carolyn Leavitt continue to show that they do not truly care about the rise in political violence across this country, or about the epidemic of gun violence that remains a major policy failure they refuse to address. Instead, what they care about is using these tragedies for political gain. But that narrative falls apart when responsibility points back at them. And that's exactly what happened today, as Carolyn Leavitt had a complete meltdown on Fox News after it was revealed that the two gunmen involved yesterday were Trump supporters. Their beliefs have now been exposed, and her response was to panic. We're going to break down that reaction in detail, but first, if you could take a quick second to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It really goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, before we dive into Carolyn Leavitt's meltdown, let's start by looking at the harmful rhetoric she continues to push that fuels these kinds of attacks.
Exceptions to this unity. This past Friday, 58 House Democrats voted no, and 38 voted present on a resolution that simply stated, condemning in the strongest possible terms the assassination of Charles James Kirk and all forms of political violence. There were no strings attached to this vote. This was a simple gesture of human decency to denounce political violence. I wish I could say that this was only a fringe group, but 96 votes is nearly half of the entire House Democrat caucus. And they didn't just vote against this basic resolution condemning political violence. A number of those same Democrats took to the House floor to smear Charlie Kirk's name. The man wasn't even buried yet, and Democrat members of Congress were denigrating his memory on the floor of the House of Representatives. This was truly a sad moment and a clear reflection of how radical the Democrat Party has become. Many Democrats in elective office have now been totally captured by a radical fringe of the far-left base who want to dehumanize every person they disagree with. We must continue to call this wickedness out. It's the only way that our nation can heal. For too long, past leaders have offered platitudes while political violence has been allowed to fester and harm innocent Americans. There has been coordinated campaigns dating back years, spearheaded by radical left-wing organizations centered on dehumanizing, intimidating, doxing, and even attacking Americans whom they disagree with. These groups have radicalized impressionable individuals to foment violence. An attempted transgender assassin traveled to Justice Brett Kavanaugh's family home with plans to end his life. An attempted assassin came within an inch of ending President Trump's life in Butler, Pennsylvania, and on the campaign trail, another attempted assassin tried to kill the president at his golf club in Florida. A left-wing assassin shot United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson right in the back in the heart of New York City. ICE agents are facing a more than 1,000% increase in assaults for simply doing their jobs. Violent radical left-wing mobs engaged in illegal behavior, targeted Jewish Americans, and shut down America's college campuses under the previous administration. Left-wing mobs burned down Tesla dealerships out of, quote, protest of Elon Musk and his policies. In May, a left-wing activist shouting "Free Palestine" murdered 2 innocent Israeli embassy staffers outside of the D.C. Jewish Museum here in Washington. These are just a few examples, prominent examples, of the growing left-wing political violence in our country. Enough is enough, and as President Trump has promised, he will directly address the dark sources funding and supporting this domestic terrorism to finally restore order in our country. The American people can expect further, very strong action on this very soon.
The fault for these violent acts rests squarely on the shoulders of Donald Trump and all of those who push his vile and disgusting talking points in his administration. I'm tired of acting like that is not the case. Donald Trump has had more political power than any person in this country for the past decade, as we have seen shooting after shooting after shooting, as we've seen a rise of political violence. Does he tone down the rhetoric? Number. Does he take any meaningful steps to make sure that we end the epidemic of gun violence in America? Number. And so I refuse to allow us to have a conversation that does not squarely blame Donald Trump because it is his fault. It is. And if Joe Biden was still president, do you think Republicans wouldn't be blaming him? So let's stop doing this. Oh, well, we have to be nice in our politics. Number. Get down in the muck and start acting like the truth is the truth, because it is. It's not going to hurt you. It's going to expose people just how disgusting this Republican Party is. And that was very clear when we saw just how connected these two gunmen yesterday were to Donald Trump. And then we're going to get into Carolyn Leavitt's response. Mormon church shooter had a Trump sign outside his house. The Mormon church shooter who killed at least 4 people in an attack on Sunday had a Trump sign outside his house in War MAGA merch. Public records confirm that Thomas Jacob Sanford lived at the residence with the Trump sign, which was a 15-minute drive away from the church, where he opened fire on hundreds of the congregation, killing at least 4 and wounding 8 others. Authorities said Sanford rammed into the church's front door with his pickup truck before he started shooting and later set the building on fire. He was killed in a gunfight with 2 officers within 10 minutes. You see right here the assailant wearing a Trump shirt. You can also see the Trump sign above a stop sign at his house. But this was not the only gunman we saw yesterday. A Texas man was arrested for threatening to shoot up a pride parade as payback for Charlie Kirk. Payback for Charlie Kirk. This is exactly what Donald Trump has fueled with his rhetoric, calling people on the left thugs and animals, saying they need to be stopped. Instead of lowering tensions in this country, he raises them for his own gain, putting more people in danger without a second thought. What stood out to me yesterday was what we didn't see. Where were the tweets from Kash Patel? Where were the claims about bullet casings or instant narratives about ideology? Usually, J.D. Vance, Kash Patel, and Christine Ullman rush to push that kind of framing when they can blame the left, but not this time. And that silence makes what Carolyn Leavitt said here even more telling.
Trying to understand more about this, how premeditated it was, how much planning went into it, whether he left a note. All of those questions have yet to be answered, but certainly will be answered by the FBI. I think the American people in your audience can be assured. Look at the great work that the FBI did in light of, or in the hours and days following the assassination, on Charlie Kirk's life. That was a successful investigation, and that investigation continues. And that assassin was, of course, being held accountable in the court of law now.
Hold up. Time out. The FBI says they're looking into it. But let's be real. The facts are already out there. Media outlets confirmed this individual had a Trump sign in his yard and was wearing MAGA gear. But Carolyn Leavitt and others act like they can't possibly track that information down. When Kash Patel rushed online with bullet casing photos claiming some bizarre anti-ICE message, something nobody had ever even heard before, he managed to post that within minutes. Yet here, with clear evidence of Trump ties, there's complete silence. Why? Because Donald Trump and his allies only care about these tragedies when they can spin them for political gain. That's the truth. And let's stop pretending there's some middle ground here. We're standing on the side of common sense, like maybe America doesn't need constant gun violence, while the other side is bankrolled by billionaires and exploiting every tragedy. Meeting in the middle only drags us further into their game. And that's how we keep losing ground. They're not operating in good faith. They don't want solutions. They want the chaos because that's how they win. And it's exhausting to keep watching them make it so clear they don't take any of this seriously. Just listen to this exchange between Jake Tapper and Mike Johnson yesterday.
Just looking at the principle at stake here, if you can remove Comey and Trump out of the equation, as a constitutional attorney and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, do you believe it's acceptable for any president to publicly or privately instruct their attorney general to prosecute a political opponent and go as far as firing a U.S. attorney if they don't bring charges because they don't think the case is strong enough?
I'm glad you brought up the principle. That is exactly what's at issue here. James Comey lied to Congress. Okay, he took an oath. He said things to Congress that were simply not true. It's called perjury. A grand jury that is not, a nonpartisan, non-biased grand jury that was assembled looked at the charges and they agreed, they voted to bring an indictment of James Comey. Not President Trump, not the DOJ, but a grand jury. That's how our system works. It's a very important principle for us to apply that everybody has to subscribe to the law, even a former FBI director. And he has lots to answer for. There are many things that he could have been indicted for, but the statute of limitations ran out on so many of those matters. Not here. Perjury is important. You can't, especially if you're a high official, appointed or elected official, you cannot raise your hand, take an oath, and lie to Congress. And that's an important principle, Jake, for us to advance.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, but you didn't answer the part about President Trump putting it all out there for everyone to see on Truth Social after pushing out the U.S. attorney, this conservative Eric Siebert. He wrote to Pam Bondi, the attorney general, nothing's being done about Comey, Schiff, and Letitia James, even though they're all, quote, guilty as hell. The president demanded justice must be served now. He mentioned Lindsay Halligan, who is now the acting U.S. attorney. And Bondi clearly got the message. She appointed Halligan U.S. attorney, despite the fact she has no prosecutorial experience. A few days later, Halligan indicted Comey. I mean, this looks like it was directed by the president. As you know, indictments are not convictions. Indictments have to do with a grand jury saying whether or not a case can be brought. It's not a finding of guilt. The defense isn't even allowed to present a case there. Don't you have any qualms about any president telling an attorney general, go after these three political opponents?
I would take issue with that. I don't think that's what he did. But what I have qualms with, Jake, is the total and utter weaponization of the Department of Justice. And Comey was a primary person responsible for that. They quite literally, for 4 years under the Biden administration, turned the entire apparatus of our judicial system against one person. His name's Donald Trump. There's never been a political figure in the history of the world who was so maligned and attacked, certainly not using the legal system of his country to go after him in the way they did. Every way possible. You and I would need 3 hours of a program to go through all the ways that they did that. They weaponized the DOJ. And so that's what Comey ultimately was the leader of and responsible for. He was one of the primary persons who did that. And I think if he lied to Congress about what he knew and when he knew it, then that is a matter that transcends politics. I think he has to be tried for that. And I expect that the jury in that case will determine that that's exactly what he did.
They are weaponizing the Justice Department against their political opponents, then turning around and blaming President Biden simply because his own son was prosecuted and convicted. Are we really supposed to take these people at their word on anything? Absolutely not. We cannot keep playing this game of blind trust. Just yesterday, Senator Chuck Schumer said he's going to trust Republicans to do the right thing on the budget vote, to trust that they won't strip away health care. But why? What evidence has anyone seen that justifies that trust? The truth is, there's no reason to give them that benefit of the doubt. Democrats should hold their ground, firm, strong, and unshaken. Get in the fight, call them out, and refuse to surrender an inch. That's what I'm committed to doing on this show. And if you want to support that mission, please take a second to hit the subscribe button and leave a like on this video. If you made it all the way to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments, and until next time, I will see you soon.